Chapter 226, Young Master Polaris, A Call from Old Master. Jackie Balls stood at the door with his mobile phone and reported respectfully. "Jackie, you're so big-mouthed. I told you not to tell the elderly at home, but now you've let everyone know." Mia Kyle scolded him as she took over the phone and said sweetly, "Grandpa." No one knew what the person on the other side of the phone said. Mia nodded vigorously and said, "Grandpa, don't worry. I am a lucky girl. I won't fall to death so easily." Speaking of this, Mia quickly jumped a few times and said, "Grandpa, did you hear that? I can run and jump. I am perfectly fine. Don't worry." "Grandpa, don't worry. I am really fine. If you don't believe me, you can ask Kevin. He is also here." Mia handed the phone to Kevin. He glanced at the phone, and a dark and sharp look flashed across his eyes. He did not pick up the phone, nor did he intend to speak to Grandpa Kyle. Kevin Kyle did not answer the phone. Mia had to explain to Grandpa Kyle, "Grandpa, it's too tiring to fly around. Just stay put. I will fly back out to see you in a few days." Kevin picked up little Karen, looked at Karen Daly beside him, and said softly, "Let's go first." "Okay." Karen Daly nodded and followed Kevin Kyle out. For some reason, Karen Daly had just seen a deadly coldness in Kevin's eyes, but it was only there in a blink of an eye. Before she could see it clearly, Kevin had returned to the gentle and refined look she often saw, as if it was just an illusion. Would it be just an illusion? Karen couldn't help but look up at him. How could such a gentle person have such a look? She was more and more curious about him. "Dad, hold Big Karen's hand." Little Karen's soft voice suddenly appeared, and Karen Daly and Kevin looked at each other almost at the same time. Karen Daly moved her eyes away at the fastest speed. The child might have spoken unintentionally, but the adults felt extremely embarrassed. A family of 3 walked in front of them. The father was holding the child in his right hand, and her mother in his left hand. Little Karen saw it. She thought for a moment and felt that although her father was holding hers, and he should still hold Big Karen's hand. Karen Daly also saw a family of 3 walking in front of them. It was a father, a mother, and a child, not like them. A father, a stranger, and a child. Little Karen, such a silly child. She certainly did not know that if her father held another woman's hand now, her mother would never come back. As for Kevin, he loved his wife so much and had been waiting for his wife to come back. How could he hold another woman's hand? Karen Daly sighed silently and said, "Mr. Kyle, I still have work to do in the afternoon, so I have to go first." "Big Karen, don't you want to have dinner with me? Don't you want to play with me?" This time, without her father's hint, little Karen had already helped her father because she really wanted to be with Big Karen. Karen Daly smiled gently and said, "I still have work to do. I will play with you next time, all right?" "You don't need to work. Daddy has a lot of money," little Karen said while nodding her little head. She blinked her big, beautiful eyes at her father as if to say, "Dad, please help me keep Big Karen." As long as Dad said that he had a lot of money for them, Big Karen could stay at home with her every day, and she didn't have to go to work. However, little Karen did not get a response from her father. Her father did not say a word. She felt that her father was so stingy. He obviously had a lot of money, but why didn't he spend it on Big Karen? Little Karen was hurt. She decided not to love her stingy father for the rest of the day. At that crucial moment, he would not even help her keep Big Karen with her. "Silly child." Karen Daly touched little Karen's head dotingly and said to Kevin, "Mr. Kyle, I'll go first." Kevin Kyle nodded. "Be careful on the way." Karen Daly also nodded and waved to little Karen. "Little Karen, goodbye." Little Karen didn't know what to say. Little Karen widened her eyes and watched Karen Daly leave with shock and grievance until she could no longer see Karen. She burst into tears, and her heart was broken. She cried so hard as if she could tear down the entire hospital. "Karen, don't cry. Big Karen has a job, so she can't accompany you all the time." Kevin patiently coaxed the child, but her crying did not stop at all. Kevin patted little Karen on the back and said, "Little Karen, I will take you to Big Karen, okay?" "No." Little Karen raised her pudgy little hand and wiped her tears. She cried even louder. "No. How could it be like this? How could things turn out like this?" Big Karen called her a silly child, but she was not silly at all. Big Karen didn't like her anymore, did she? But Big Karen obviously liked her all the time. Why did she suddenly call her a silly child and didn't like her anymore? Oh no, it must be her bad father. Her father had money, but he didn't want to spend it on Big Karen, and he didn't want to help her keep her. At this time, little Karen felt that she was hurt badly. It would be good if she had more money. In that case, she could keep Big Karen without her father's help. She cried and said aggrievedly, "Dad is a bad guy. I don't want you." Sob sob. "Karen, don't cry. The more you cry, the uglier you would become." Kevin coaxed his daughter, feeling distressed and helpless. "No, I'm not ugly." Well, my baby is the most beautiful. I don't want Daddy anymore." Little Karen had never been so unreasonable. Kevin couldn't stop her from crying, no matter how he coaxed her. He felt so helpless. Mia Kyle was a person who couldn't sit still. Once she got to know that her ribs were fine and she only got a few bruises, she didn't want to stay in the hospital anymore. After talking to Grandpa Kyle, she immediately changed her clothes and was ready to go back to the crew to start working again. Jackie Ball couldn't hold her back, even if he followed her. They immediately saw Kevin coaxing his daughter, who couldn't calm little Karen down. Seeing Kevin patiently coax little Karen, Mia's eyes teared up again. Chapter 227. Mia Kyle could never imagine Kevin doing this in the past. The man who owned the empire of Rovio used to be so cold. She didn't expect that he would be such a loving father one day. He could have handed over little Karen to his assistants, but he didn't. As long as it was something about little Karen, he would do it all by himself. Mia Kyle had once thought that this brother of hers would be lonely for the rest of his life, so she kept finding him women. And he finally got married and had a child later. Just when she finally thought that her brother got his happiness, the woman who could bring happiness to his life suddenly disappeared, leaving behind a box of ashes. Mia Kyle witnessed how her brother fell from the heavenly happiness to hell. His soul was hollow. If it weren't for little Karen, he would probably be dead. Thinking of this, Mia Kyle rushed up and hugged little Karen. Sweetie, I know you are mad at Daddy. Do you want to stay with me for a while? I want my little aunt. Little Karen wiped her tears with her small hands and said pitifully, Hey, sister-in-law has already gone. Go and do your work. I'll take care of her. After saying that, Mia Kyle left with little Karen in her arms. Looking at little Karen that was crying so badly, Mia guessed that it must be because of Big Karen who left. Little Karen and Big Karen were daughter and mother. Ever since Karen Daly was back, little Karen wanted to see her so badly, even though she did not know that Karen Daly was her mother. Since she missed her mother, then she would take little Karen to her mother. Because her silly brother did not know what to do. As soon as Karen Daly arrived at the company, Mia Kyle arrived with little Karen, whose eyes were as red as a little rabbit. Mia Kyle put little Karen into Karen Daly's arms and said angrily, She is already so sad, it's your business now. After saying that, Mia Kyle turned around and left, leaving Karen Daly holding a child in her arms. She stood there in a daze and didn't know what to do. Mia Kyle sounded as if it was her fault that little Karen was crying this badly. Little Karen did not want Karen Daly to dislike her. Even though she was heartbroken, she was unwilling to cry now. Little Karen's heart ached when she saw little Karen's red eyes. She hugged the little girl tightly and said, Little Karen, you can go to work with me. I'm not a silly girl, said little Karen while leaning her head against Karen's shoulder. She looked so pitiful that she was about to cry again. She had made up her mind. If Big Karen called her a silly girl again, she would definitely cry loudly, just like how she cried to her father just now. Our little Karen is so cute and smart, you are not silly at all. Karen Daly rubbed her head, feeling helpless. What was she thinking? Sister, do you like me? Little Karen sniffed and asked softly. Of course I like you. I like you more than everyone else. Karen Daly hugged her tightly. Even she herself did not imagine that she would like little Karen so much. She would be sad if she saw her cry, and would also miss her a lot when she did not get to see her. Little Karen did not understand what she said, but she only needed to know that Big Karen did not hate her. Since Big Karen said she liked little Karen so much, little Karen held her face and rubbed it with her little hand. Little Karen's face was a little chubby. She used her little strength to rub against Big Karen's face, which nearly melted her heart. Then I will have lunch with you and you can accompany me to work later, okay? Karen Daly pinched little Karen's face and asked softly, Okay. Little Karen lay on Karen Daly's shoulder and answered softly. Karen Daly held little Karen in her arms and looked around. She had to find a restaurant selling food that was suitable for a 3-year-old child. However, just after a short while, little Karen had fallen asleep on her shoulder. Karen Daly stroked her head, smiled gently, and said in a low voice, What a lovely girl. You are so cute. How could your mother leave you alone? Karen Daly didn't know that every word she said reached Kevin's ears, and she didn't know that there was a tracking device in the amulet that little Karen had given her. Every move of hers was under Kevin's surveillance. On the first day they met Karen Daly, Kevin already had the plan to do so, but it was not the right time, and he could not find a suitable way. Until Karen Daly got along with little Karen happily, Kevin only thought of asking little Karen to send a gift to her. After losing Karen Daly, Kevin Kyle had protected little Karen very well over the years. Therefore, little Karen's amulet had a tracking device hidden in it, in case she ever goes missing. Nick Black knocked on the door and entered the office, saying, Boss, the signal is good and the location is accurate. No matter where she goes in the future, we can accurately pinpoint her position as soon as possible to ensure her safety. Very well, Kevin nodded. He promised that he would never lose Karen Daly again, and he would never let her be hurt for even a bit. Even if this method would invade her privacy, he still had to do so. He had to know her situation for her safety because she was by Samuel Daly's side all the time. Nick Black added, Samuel Daly has been in contact with the people in Beeford City for the past 2 days. We haven't found out who he is reaching out to yet. It would be Willis and Christine Daly. Kevin made his guess immediately. In the past 3 years, Mr. Willis's company had been growing bigger. It was almost as big as the Gook family's company. Christine Daly had been accompanying Willis all this while. Samuel Daly, who was hiding in the dark, must know about it because he had part of the company's shares. Therefore, as soon as Kevin heard that Samuel Daly was in contact with the people in Beaufort City, he immediately thought of Wayless and Christine Daly. Hearing Kevin's words, Nick Black thought it made sense too. He said, "I'll arrange for someone to keep an eye on both of them. Keep an eye on Samuel too. No matter who he is contacting, I want to know." Kevin Kyle tapped the table gently with his fingertips and suddenly smiled. Chapter 228. Kevin Kyle's eyebrows were raised, the corners of his lips were slightly hooked, and his eyes were soft. Such a smile was really genuine. There was absolutely no hidden meaning. Nick Black was a little confused. Why was their boss, President Kevin, smiling this way when he mentioned Samuel Daly? After staring at Kevin Kyle for a while, Nick Black tentatively shouted, "Boss, it's all right, you may go." Kevin Kyle waved his hand, and his eyes became more gentle, which made Nick Black have goosebumps. After walking out of the office, Nick Black was still wondering if he had done something wrong that their president wanted to punish him with such a smile. Nick Black knew that Kevin Kyle could listen to Karen Daly all the time, but he didn't know that the reason why Kevin Kyle suddenly laughed was that he heard Karen Daly talking. Kevin Kyle was ordering Nick Black to pay attention to Samuel's movements when Karen Daly's voice suddenly came from the Bluetooth headset on his ears. "Little one, the more I look at you, the more I think you look like me. Is it possible that I look similar to your mother, so you look like me too?" Kevin Kyle heard Karen Daly kiss little Karen, and then heard her say, "You sleep like a piggy, and you will certainly not answer. Sleep well here, and when you wake up, I will take you out to eat delicious food." Karen Daly. Suddenly, a man's voice came into Kevin Kyle's ears, and he unconsciously frowned. "Director Cheng," Karen Daly called out. "I heard that you're so busy that you don't have time for lunch. I've packed some for you," the man said in a gentle voice. "Director Cheng, how could this be? We are colleagues. What's there to be shy about?" He could hear that the man was smiling. "Thank you, Director Cheng. You don't have to be so polite to me. If you need anything in the future, just tell me." Kevin Kyle suddenly felt agitated, but Karen Daly didn't like to bother people normally, so she would definitely refuse this man. However, as soon as he thought about this, he heard a soft voice from the earphone. "Okay." Kevin Kyle felt that something had caught his heart, and his breath suddenly stopped. "Hey, whose family does this beautiful and lovely child belong to? I see she often comes to look for you." "I'm close to this child, but I'm not close to her family." Kevin Kyle did not know if he had heard the conversation after those words. He was slow to react and suddenly realized a terrible reality. Karen Daly had completely forgotten about the past. In Karen Daly's memory, she was single and had the freedom to fall in love with anyone. And his Karen Daly was so outstanding that there must be many people chasing after her. What if someone tried to chase after Karen Daly before he could? Kevin Kyle suddenly couldn't sit still. He really wanted to rush to see Karen Daly immediately and take her hand and announce that she belonged to him. When he thought about it, Kevin Kyle had already rushed to the door of the office. He was about to open the door, but he stopped. What reason did he have now? He hoped that Karen Daly could go on a blind date again, and he could kick out the person who was on a blind date with Karen Daly again, and he would replace Karen's date and to propose to Karen Daly again. She had promised him once before, and she would say yes again, wouldn't she? As long as he could find a way to get Karen Daly back home, other things would be easy to handle. Recently, Karen Daly felt that the happiest thing for her was the hot dishes prepared by her father when she got home after work. Tonight, her father had prepared several dishes that Karen Daly liked very much, such as salt-roasted chicken, bean curd, and vegetables. These were all very common dishes, but her father did it with great care. It was very appetizing just by looking at them. After taking a bite of the bean curd, Karen Daly couldn't help but nod in praise. "Dad, your cooking skills are getting better." Samuel Daly took off his apron and said, "It's all because you like it. I want you to have a good meal. That's why I want to practice my cooking skills." Hearing her father's words, Karen Daly's nose twitched slightly, and she suddenly felt like crying. However, she blinked her eyes and forced back her tears. "Thank you, Dad." Karen Daly still remembered that when she had just recovered from the serious illness, she didn't remember anything about the past. She shut herself up in the room and didn't go out at all. It was her father who accompanied her patiently and guided her to walk out of the shadows step by step. If it weren't for her father's patience, there wouldn't be the rebirth of Karen Daly. "Silly, why are you so polite to me? You're my child." As he spoke, Samuel Daly helped Karen Daly add some dishes to her plate. "You must be very tired since you were so busy today. Eat more." "Actually, I'm not busy at work. It's just that I met a lovely little girl recently. After work, I would wait for her family to pick her up, and after that, I'd go home," Karen Daly said without any precaution. How could Samuel Daly not know that Karen Daly had met this little girl? He also knew very well who the little girl was. He just wanted to test if Karen Daly would tell him the truth. Hearing Karen Daly's words, Samuel Daly was relieved. He picked up more food for Karen Daly. "It's tiring to take care of a child. You should eat more." Although he said these caring words, he sneered in his heart. "Kevin Kyle, oh, Kevin Kyle, when you see your wife, your child's mother, right in front of you, but you can't tell her the truth, That kind of unsatisfied desire must be wonderful. If Kevin Kyle knew what he should do to help this situation, Kevin would come to look for Samuel Daly sooner. As long as Kevin could help Samuel complete what he wanted to do, he might return Karen Daly to him. But Kevin Kyle didn't. Samuel Daly added, "Why don't you tell me how many boys have been chasing after you recently?" Samuel Daly asked how many boys there were, and not if there were any boys pursuing her, which proved that there had always been boys pursuing her all the time. Karen Daly looked up at Samuel Daly and shook her head. She didn't like to communicate with strangers, and she didn't like to make friends. Other than some contacts at work, there were almost no other men around her. Of course, no one would be pursuing her. Samuel Daly said earnestly, "However, you are not young anymore. If you meet a suitable man, you can consider it carefully." "Dad, I'm not in a hurry." Karen Daly did not want to talk about relationship matters with her father. Karen Daly interrupted Samuel Daly in time, but Samuel Daly's words had a great impact on her. At this time, lying on the bed, she was thinking about a suitable man. Today, when she heard her father's words, the first person who had appeared in her mind was Kevin Kyle. She and Kevin Kyle were in a completely different world. Moreover, Kevin Kyle had a wife he deeply loved, and little Karen. How could she have feelings for him? Speaking of the right man, she thought of it over and over again. She couldn't think of anyone else who was suitable. This kind of thing couldn't be forced. It all depended on fate. Chapter 229. In the afternoon, Mia Kyle went to pick up little Karen from Karen Daly and went back to Kevin Kyle's house. Mia Kyle also took advantage of the afternoon's free time to think of a plan for her brother to pursue his wife. Of course, her plan was simple and rough. Her character was straightforward. Since she liked it, she should go after it. Why did she think about so much? However, Mia Kyle was very clear that her brother was calm and reserved, and he would not use her method, so she did not tell Kevin Kyle. She would just execute it on his behalf. Thinking of her own method, Mia Kyle thought it was perfect. There was no girl who could resist such a romantic attack. When she gets her sister-in-law back, Kevin Kyle would just have to give Mia Kyle the first-class merit. She didn't need too much. She could just ask for a new sports car for herself. Mia Kyle reached out and pinched little Karen's pink face and rubbed it a few times as if she was kneading flour. "Little baby girl, your favorite Big Karen will soon return to our big family. By then, you have to thank me very much. Little aunt, give me the money." "Money-minded baby, what do you want so much money for?" "For Big Karen." Humph, as long as she had a lot of money, she would give all the money to Big Karen, and Big Karen could accompany her every day. Little Karen thought, "You little fellow." Mia Kyle poked little Karen's head and said with jealousy, "I've been taking care of you for so many years, but I can't compare with your mother who has never taken care of you. Big Karen." Little Karen blinked her eyes and said innocently, "Daddy likes Big Karen." Mia Kyle nodded again and said, "Little Karen, you're so cunning. Your father likes Big Karen, and you can see that." Little Karen nodded vigorously. She was her father's baby and was always around him. She would know that her father liked Big Karen. "Little one, do you hope your uncle likes me?" "No. Why?" "Uncle likes me." "All right, you win," Mia Kyle said in exasperation. Mia Kyle had to admit that little Karen would be super smart when she grows up. At such a young age, she even knew how to scheme against her little aunt. It would be terrible when she's older. "Daddy." Seeing that Dad was back, little Karen immediately opened her arms. Kevin Kyle walked over and touched her small nose. "You're not crying and complaining to me today?" Little Karen blinked innocently with her big eyes as if to say, "Daddy, don't talk nonsense. I'm a lovely and sensible baby, so I won't cry." Looking at little Karen's nifty face, Kevin Kyle couldn't help but laugh. "From now on, my little Karen is going to be called a snotworm." "Daddy, no. Snotworm, this name is good. It's very suitable for little Karen," Mia Kyle interjected. "Little aunt, I don't want it," little Karen said softly and pursed her lips. If they dared to talk about her again, she would cry at them. Anyway, when Big Karen wasn't here, she would cry if she wanted to. She wasn't afraid of them. Kevin Kyle rubbed little Karen's head and said, "Since you don't want to be a snotworm, hurry up and eat and rest early." "Okay," little Karen replied softly. It was a quiet night, so quiet that the sound of the breeze could be heard. It was not only Karen Daly who was lying in bed, unable to fall asleep, but also Kevin Kyle. He was listening to Karen Daly's movements all the time. This bug was indeed very effective. When there was no noise around, even the sound of Karen Daly breathing could be heard clearly. It was as if she was lying beside him. Kevin Kyle, suddenly he heard Karen Daly calling his name softly and softly. It felt much better than when he heard her call out the 3 words, "Mr. Kevin Kyle," in a polite and distant tone. Little Karen is so cute, I really want to take her home and raise her." A crisp and gentle voice came from the earphone again, which made Kevin Kyle's face grow a little gloomy. The person whom Big Karen truly missed was little Karen, and not little Karen's father. Later, Kevin Kyle heard the rustling of the quilt, and Karen Daly's breathing became more and more uniform. It seemed that she had fallen asleep. Hearing that Karen Daly had fallen asleep, Kevin Kyle turned his head and kissed the little girl next to him, and then closed his eyes with peace of mind. "No, don't touch my belly. Don't." He didn't know how long it had been, but Karen Daly's heart-wrenching voice came from the Bluetooth headset. Kevin Kyle instantly woke up. "Karen," he cried. After calling her name, Kevin Kyle remembered that she was not by his side. He immediately got out of bed and wanted to save her, but he was slow to realize that she was not really in danger, but she was only dreaming. She must have been having these bad dreams. Little Karen had been cut out of her womb prematurely, robbed by someone else. Even if she could not remember the past, such unforgettable things would torture her from time to time, every time she was dreaming at night. Kevin Kyle didn't think about it anymore. He took out his mobile phone and dialed Karen Daly's phone number. He heard her cell phone ringing. Soon, the phone was connected, and Karen Daly's voice, lingering with fear, could be heard. "Hello, is it little Karen?" "It's me, Kevin Kyle." Hearing her voice, Kevin Kyle wanted to hold her in his arms and tell her not to be afraid anymore. No one would dare to hurt her anymore, but they were separated by a wall that could not be destroyed. "Mr. Kyle, it's so late. Is little Karen looking for me?" However, in just a few seconds, it sounded that she had already calmed down. From this, Kevin Kyle could judge that it was not the first time for her to have such a nightmare. "It's not little Karen who is looking for you. It's me who wants to hear your voice." For the first time, Kevin Kyle said things so rashly. "Mr. Kyle, calling a lady you are not close to in the middle of the night is not a good thing, and on top of that, saying such a thing?" Karen Daly's voice sounded a little unhappy. Kevin Kyle took a deep breath and said seriously, "Karen Daly, let's meet tomorrow, without little Karen. Let's meet each other. Mr. Kyle, if there's something you need to say it now. I don't think we're that close that we need to meet. I'll take you to meet someone. After you meet him, you can tell me what you think," Kevin said. Karen Daly was speechless. Kevin Kyle added, "Karen Daly, don't think of me as a bad person. I won't hurt you. Please trust me." She didn't know if it was because Kevin Kyle's voice was too pleasant, and she didn't know whether it was because he called her in time to drag her out of the nightmare that she couldn't get out of, that her heart softened. In short, Karen Daly did not know the reason why, but she nodded and agreed to Kevin Kyle's invitation. She agreed to meet him the next day. Chapter 230. Kevin Kyle had asked Karen Daly to meet downstairs her office at 10 o'clock in the morning. Karen Daly went to the office first to see the management first, so that she could leave later without seeming like she was skiving off work. "Miss Daly, flowers for you." As soon as she arrived at the front desk of the office, the receptionist stopped Karen Daly, pointing to the 2 red roses on the counter. In Karen's memory, she had never experienced such a thing. For a moment, she did not know whether she should accept it or not, or should she take it back to the office, or throw it into the trash can? After thinking about it, Karen felt that the most polite way was to accept it. She would know who sent them, and then she would find a way to return the flowers. Thinking of this, she smiled at the receptionist politely, and then returned to the office with these roses in her arms. Back in the office, Karen Daly picked up a bunch of cards that were stuck in the flowers and opened them. Karen Daly then felt goosebumps all over herself. "Big Karen, I love you. Since the first time I saw you, I have deeply fallen in love with you. I want to hug you, kiss you, and even sleep with you. If you have the same feelings towards me, please call me after you receive this bouquet of flowers. I am waiting for you, Kevin." After reading it, Karen Daly felt as if she was going to puke. What was this mess? Kevin? Which Kevin? Karen Daly thought about it seriously. Among all the people she knew, Kevin Kyle was the only one whose name was Kevin. Could this really be that cold and aloof Kevin Kyle? It seemed incredulous. In Karen's eyes, Kevin Kyle was the kind of man who was calm, reserved, didn't like to smile, and was very serious and responsible in doing things. When she was with him, he always made people feel very safe. He would not do such childish things. Karen tried to think about the appearance and tone of Kevin's words, but she couldn't figure it out. She shook her head and denied it. Kevin should not be such a frivolous person. However, she might only know what was on the surface and not what was in his heart. In the past, she had never thought that Kevin would call her at midnight. But just last night, Kevin did call her and said that he wanted to hear her voice. If he could say such cheesy words last night, Karen was afraid that he might actually have written these nauseating words on the card. Looking at the card again, Karen really wanted to call Kevin Kyle. It was not to tell him that she was thinking the same, but to tell him that she didn't want to see him anymore. Buzz. Karen was about to call Kevin, but her phone on the desk rang first. As soon as she looked at the phone number, Karen knew it was Kevin. She took a deep breath, answered it, and said without mercy, "Mr. Kyle, I think there's really no need for us to meet again. You better not do such childish things again." Half an hour ago, Kevin had called Karen. She had even told him on the phone that she would wait for him to pick her up. Why had her attitude towards him completely changed in such a short period of time? Kevin frowned slightly and said, "Karen, I have already arrived downstairs of your office. If you have anything to say, you can come down first. Mr. Kyle, if you love someone, just love her with all your heart. Don't get distracted. If you do so, people think lowly of you." After that, Karen Daly hung up the phone. For some unknown reason, she felt a little uncomfortable. Maybe she felt sad on behalf of his wife, or perhaps she had thought that it was a good thing to have a man in this world who was so obsessed with a woman, but such a good thing had turned into a mere shadow before her eyes, and that upset her. President Kyle, please wait a moment. After a while, there was a loud noise outside the office. As soon as Karen looked up, she saw Kevin, with his darkened face, barging into the office. He stood at the door of her office. His two sharp eyes fell on her, making her unable to look away from him. After staring at her for a while, Kevin suddenly stepped towards her. Although he seemed to be covered by rage, his pace was still elegant, and his temperament was still cold and noble. Mr. Kyle. Call me Kevin. He grabbed her hand and dragged her away, no longer asking for her opinion. Today, whether she agreed or not, he had to take her to that place to see that person. He wanted her to know that he wanted to pursue her. Kevin held Karen's hand tightly, but his control of his strength was very good, so he did not hurt her. Even when he stepped forward quickly, he paid attention to her speed. Mr. Kyle. Before Karen finished her words, she felt that Kevin gave her a hard look, which was cold and bone-piercing. She had never seen Kevin Kyle like this before. For a moment, she was a little scared. She swallowed back what she wanted to say and followed him obediently. Kevin put her in the passenger seat of the car. He closed the door and took his seat in the driver's seat. After checking that she had buckled the seatbelt, Kevin immediately started the car and rushed out. After driving for a while, Karen glanced at Kevin quietly. He looked very unhappy, as if he was trying his best to endure something. Karen didn't know what was wrong with him. Seeing Kevin Kyle depressed like this, she felt distressed for no reason. Kevin. His name came from her gently parted lips. It was like a kind of tonic for him, calming Kevin's agitation and uneasiness. He tilted his head and gave her a reassuring smile. Karen, we'll be there soon. Just accompany me once. Karen nodded and said, You can drive in peace. I'll go with you. It didn't take long before she got to know his destination, the Chattertown town graveyard with the best views. She saw a tombstone that she had never thought of seeing. The name of the tombstone was none other than Karen Daly. The tombstone was somewhat different from other tombstones. There were no photos of the deceased, but only the name of the person buried there. Karen Daly, with the exact same name as her. This was Kevin Kyle's wife. 3 years ago, my wife was waiting to deliver her baby at home. With the date of delivery 1 month away, I went on a business trip. When I left, she smiled and said that she would wait for me at home, but when I came back, all I had were her ashes. My family told me that my wife was in a car accident on the way to visit her good friend. She was seriously injured and then lost her life. Her last wish was to have the doctors protect our child. Kevin said it all very calmly, as if this matter had nothing to do with him, but Karen understood his sorrow from the bottom of his heart. When he was leaving, his beloved woman was still smiling at him and waiting for him to go home. When he came back, the person he loved had turned into a pile of ashes. How desperate would he feel?